Hey everybody, Erick Landon here, and today I'd like to talk about resellers versus scalpers and to learn the difference between them, because apparently a lot of people over the past few years have been calling us the same. I say calling us because I am a reseller. I have been a reseller for almost 9 years over, and I've had my share of people. Not too many, of course. I've always tried to keep low prices or fair prices, but I have met people in my life who have referred to me or called me a scalper. We have a word for that in Mexico. For those who don't know, I am from Mexico. We have a word for those people. You call them scalpers, and we call them coyotes. Coyotes. That's the name, the dirty name we use for these people. Because they're always, what is a scalper or a coyote? This is the kind of people that buy something for a really low price and then resell it for a really high price. And that's pretty much why they are so infamous, because it sucks, you know, that's pretty dishonest. But the life of a reseller is not that different from that, especially if we get cheap opportunities to resell for a fair price, even when we got those things for a really low price. Now in video games it's no different. Nowadays, as you may already know, the video game market, the buy, sell, trade video game market, whether it's from a retail store or an independent shop or whatever, it's, at least in Mexico, I think in the USA is the same, in some other countries is the same situation, in some others like England. I was in England and it's definitely not the same. And when I was there for 5 months, I noticed how hard it is to be a reseller, let alone a scalper. So I know there are some countries in which resellers, independent resellers like me, we are technically non-existent, or we can't live on this, you know, we can't earn a real profit and pay all our bills with this. But in countries like Mexico, you can. It's actually possible, and it's been possible for several years, for almost over a decade. So when I began my business as a reseller, I began around, like I said, 9 years ago, but I was one of those guys, you know, sitting on the floor on a flea market, with very few merchandise, very few games, and all of those games were an anime, were piracy. If you're gonna judge me for that, it's okay. If you're from Mexico or from anywhere, probably in Latin America, I don't think you're gonna judge me. I know piracy is illegal, especially in countries like the USA or some others, but there are some other countries where yes, it's still illegal, but it's a joke. Everybody can do that and nothing happens. The police is not after you. But, you know, I was there for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months until I realized that I wasn't making any real profit. And I felt bad, kind of, you know, I was like, what the hell am I doing with my life, being a criminal, selling piracy? And then I started hanging out with another reseller. This guy had physical original video games for sale, and he lent me a space next to him. And this guy his name was Carlos. He was my mentor. I have no idea where he is right now. I lost touch with him many years ago. The thing is that I was introduced to the reselling business of original video games. And back then I didn't know it was a real business, that it could make a real profit. You could make a real profit from it. And then grow up as a businessman, and finally to a point where you could actually live on this, pay your bills, and save up money. That's what I did, but that's a really long story that I will have to tell you some other day, because right now I want to focus between this big, huge problem that we now have, us gamers, because I am a reseller, yes, but I'm also a gamer, I'm also a collector. I am a guy who buys video games, whether it's to collect them or to play them or resell them. I am a client, I'm a customer too. And this is something that I saw, all of us resellers and collectors saw this coming many years ago, where 5 or 6 years ago there wasn't too many. You could still buy games like, I don't know, Valkyrie Profile for PlayStation 1. You could buy that game for $50 or less, and I'm serious, $40, and collect it and resell it for I don't know, $60. That was okay. Really rare games like Chrono Trigger, complete in box for the Super Nintendo, that was $50, man. That was like, if one guy was selling that game for $50, complete in box, I was like, oh, that guy's a scalper. And today, Chrono Trigger complete in box is over $200 more, I'm pretty sure. So the big problem nowadays is that back then, people like me were making a profit by reselling games, by buying them for a fair price and reselling them for a fair price. I used to buy games like, I don't know, I never bought Chrono Trigger, but I actually did buy Valkyrie Profile for $40. I think last it was $30, and resold it for $50. I mean, that's a fair price, a fair profit. I don't see anything scalper or coyote on that. And all of us resellers were like that. But you know, time went on and more people began doing this as a business, first as a hobby, then and as some extra, which is the more common trade nowadays. And then today there are thousands of resellers and scalpers, at least in my city. I don't know where you live in. Maybe it's the same situation, maybe it's not, I don't know, but there are several places, at least here in Mexico, several cities, where this has become a huge problem. You know, people hating on both resellers and scalpers because to them, we're technically the same thing, and we're not. A reseller is nothing but a businessman, a merchant, somebody who buys something for a certain price and then resellers for another. That's capitalism, man. That's like, everybody, even a kid knows that. But like I said, a scalper or a coyote is somebody who buys for a really low price and sells for a really high price. And you might be wondering, how are these people making a business? Well, there's a lot of, I'm not saying this to offend anybody, but there's a lot of ignorance out there, ignorant people who buys these things, who don't know better. They don't know the real market, they don't know the real price of a video game, and they fall for it. You know, these people take advantage of these innocent, ignorant people who probably know nothing about video games. And there are those who do know the prices of the market. They are familiar with the market, with prices and all that stuff, and they just can't find that particular game anywhere else except from a scalper. So what do they do? If they have money, buy it for a really high price. So these people are taking advantage and all that jazz. But what I really wanted to discuss with you today was precisely that. First of all, how to differentiate a scalper from a reseller. Like I've already explained, it's very easy. But if you are not into this market and you don't know prices and all that jazz, it might be very difficult for you to go into a shop or to go into Facebook groups or to go to eBay and look for a video game and see the prices and then be surprised, be amazed by how high the price currently is for that video game you're looking for. And it's always been the same problem. Games have been rising up, especially rare or JRPGs actually, or RPGs in general, or you know, cold following games. Those are the kinds of games that always go up in price, or overrated games, or overly praised games like Persona 5 or Nier Automata. It's been an entire year, over a year since those games came out, and they're still in the $30-$40 range. But that's another example. My problem with scalpers and coyotes is that they're starting indirectly to stain our reputation. People are starting to get into this business to avoid us and scalpers alike. because they already know where do we buy, they already know for how much we pay for certain things. People have gotten smarter, for so to say, and that's a cool thing. But you know, putting us resellers and scalpers in the same spot and comparing us and hating on us and not differentiating between us, that's pretty bad for us. And guess what? It has ruined a lot of business nowadays. I used to have acquaintances with their shops, with the huge shops, and these guys were cool. If you watch my anime convention in Mexico, Mexican anime convention video, I will leave it at the end of this one. I make a shot where there's this guy. He's an acquaintance of mine, and I have made business with this guy for years. And this guy is also falling apart, and this is like one of the kings, for so to say, of resellers in my city. He's pretty famous because we often see this guy in anime conventions or in gaming conventions, and he has like he had two or three shops in a mall in downtown, but now he only has one, and he's planning on closing that shop and just, you know, start selling on the internet, on eBay and Facebook groups and all that stuff. So that's pretty lame. Some of you are going to say, well, the market is changing, people are moving on to the internet. That's okay, but that doesn't change the fact that we have a real problem here. That I'm not blaming you guys, I'm not blaming all customers on this planet, but what I'm asking you is to stop comparing us to scalpers, because we're not. I mean, if you know prices and if you know the market, even in the slide list, you can easily tell when somebody's selling something to you for a high price or for a fair price. But the problem today, at least in my city, is people who don't want to pay a fair price. They always want to pay a cheap price for everything. I mean, we're all cheap to some extent. Collectors, we don't like, I said in my previous video, I don't like paying full price for a special edition, but I sometimes pay fair but full price for a video game that I really want to play and own, a standard edition. But these people nowadays, there are more and more who want to not become resellers, but act as if they were resellers, you know, just to buy video games for a really cheap price, play them, and then resell them later for a fair price, for a high price. Some of these people become scalpers without even knowing about it. So that's the problem, guys. Please learn how to differentiate between a scalper and a reseller. This problem right now, this animosity between us, is causing some real damage in the market, at least in Mexico. I know for a fact that in the USA it's starting to cause some real damage. I've seen some of my favorite YouTubers address this situation, where whether they were resellers or not, they complain about this, and it's up to you, really, because resellers are always going to exist, scalpers are always going to exist as well. But if you go around feeding these scalpers, they're gonna grow more and more and more. And if you go around hating on us both and rejecting us and making your own little business, then you're just one of those new millions of people who are destroying this market, like seriously. But anyway, those are two slightly separate matters. Who you buy from and what you buy, for how much you pay for that thing, that's something entirely different. The thing is that resellers versus scalpers is a problem nowadays. I'm not asking you to address this problem in any way, but I'm asking you to be conscious about it, to not exactly to ask you to support your local resellers, because that's obvious. I mean, I think that's subjective. I think you should support your local resellers, whether they own a physical shop or a virtual shop. You should support your resellers. But that's just me. That's just my opinion. But the thing that I'm addressing right now, as objectively as possible, is exactly that: to differentiate between us. Don't hate on us both. Reject scalpers, and if you don't want to support us, that's fine, but at least show some, not exactly appreciation, but respect, or leave us alone. That's all I wanted to talk about with you guys today. And I'm sorry if I wasted your time on this video. It's cool if it was informative to you. I hope it was, because like I said, this is a situation that it's dangerous right now. We saw it coming. We all, resellers and collectors and gamers, we saw this coming many years ago. Today the market is really badly damaged. I mean, right now I can barely make a living reselling games. Like I said many times before, I have my own shop in a mall, not in the street or a virtual shop, no, inside a mall. I was sort of like a successful reseller. People trusted me, and today I am not. I'm on my own, selling things on Facebook groups or on second-hand websites. And I've been doing okay, but barely, you know, and I'm not the only one. I know a lot of resellers that used to have their own shops, their own capital, their own merchandise, and right now either they do something else or they're just like me, you know, they're barely hanging on. So this is the situation. These people, scalpers and coyotes, they're damaging us, damaging our reputation, and making normal customers, normal gamers, stay away from us, from all of us both, you know. So it will greatly help a lot if you could differentiate between a scalper, a coyote, and a reseller. Support your local resellers, don't reject them, and just keep gaming, keep buying, keep consuming. I'm sorry for being such a dirty capitalist, but keep doing this so all of us can go into this nice and positive circle of reselling games, buying games, trading games, so we can all get to play or collect the games we want for a fair price. Okay, so that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time.